Yeah,
It's
hello,
me.
Caitlyn.
Hi.
Hey, so would you mind please starting with brief introductions? That can just be your name, but feel free to add your age, profession,
hmm
where you're from, and where you are.
Yeah. So my name's Caitlyn Abbott, and I'm 32 years old, and I'm a piano teacher and a pianist. And I grew up half South Africa, half New Zealand, and now I'm in the UK.
And thank you very much for joining us from the UK in your evening. So, what do you know about Help Auckland, and how did you come to hear of us?
Yep. So I came to hear about you. It was actually just a Google search that I was kind of feeling out this idea of knowing I was going to go through the court services, but I hadn't started the process yet, just in my head. And I was like, okay, I need there has to be something out there. So I can't remember what I Googled, but I think it had the word help in it, like help with court something. And then help came up. I was like, oh, hello. Okay. And then, yeah. So it was literally just a Google search. Yeah.
That's cool. So
Mhm.
sometimes the issue with like Help Auckland, we had during the flooding, someone had also searched like Help Auckland, and they thought it was more about helping Auckland, potentially with environmental related issues. So I'm glad you came through to us,
Yeah, no, I followed it. Yeah, yeah, no, I clicked on the right one. Yeah.
can you please tell us a little bit about what brought you to search for Help Auckland in Google? So a little bit about your sexual abuse experience or experiences.
Mhm,
So how old you were at the time and what happened. But again,
mhm.
just whatever you feel comfortable to say.
Yeah, sure. So when I was 15, 16 years old, I was abused by a boarder that we had living in our house. And from, he was part of like a family friend situation. And in the church, he was in the youth group, he was a youth group leader. And so a very trusted person, very charismatic, all those great things. And he was having some problems at home. So my parents said, we can help you out. Come move in with us. And Yeah, so it was about 8 months. The abuse was in the house most days. Um, and I kind of just let it after everything had happened. I went to university, life carried on, things. I moved to Auckland so this happened in Palmerston North. And I moved to Auckland. And then things kind of started unraveling after about 3 years being in Auckland while I was studying. Um, but I still didn't think of going to the police yet or pressing charges because I was still trying to understand what had happened. This It's tricky. The physical abuse is one thing, the sexual abuse, and the psychological abuse is another thing. And I think it took me a while to understand what had happened, um, because yeah, it's still tricky to talk about because it's so just yeah, the psychological part for me was quite tricky. Being trapped in a house with this person, it's supposed to be the safe place, but that's you go home after school. That's where the danger is. So anyway, so after mm, quite a few years, when I was reading a lot of stuff that was coming through the media, so there would be NZ Herald would put um, stories out there of people getting done for sexual abuse or historic sexual abuse. And I was like, oh, hang on a second. Okay, this can go through the courts. There is a possibility that justice can be done. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. So that's where I kind of decided that I needed to do something about it. Because I couldn't stand the fact that this person, I knew where he lived I knew which city he lived in, I knew what he did, and I knew that he carried on his life as normal. So yeah, and I was terrified of seeing him again. And I was like, okay, I can't live my life like this. New Zealand's relatively small.
And
Um,
Palmerston North is pretty small.
yeah, Palmerston
We
North is
we have
pretty
to speak
small.
more about Palmerston North after.
Yeah. um, so yeah, so it was one of those things where I just couldn't. I would wake up thinking about it, and it just was starting to take over. Whereas before, previously you can kind of ignore it. Well, ignore it. Your body doesn't, but you try and get on with your day-to-day life. But yeah, eventually I couldn't ignore it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like you've kind of answered this slightly, but
Mm.
at the time, like at the time the abuse was occurring, did you think it was okay to seek help?
Ah, no,
Yeah.
no, not at all, because this is where the psychological aspect comes into it. And I think this is something with sexual abuse that, okay, I think it is talked about with survivors, victims and survivors. And I think it's understood, but it's hard to put into words the how that messes you up. And there's this weird dynamic where he was a very trusted person. He was very charismatic. Um, he was all these very good things, supposedly, that everyone saw, but I saw another side to it. So I couldn't even put into words. I thought to myself, okay, how do I even start to say what this person has done to me? Where do I start? Does that make sense? Like you
Yeah.
can't even, how are you supposed to sit your parent down who trusts this person, and it's almost like you take responsibility for now messing up this situation, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. And it's hard to explain it, but and especially as a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old, such a horrible time, just in general. I mean, I don't want to just in general, that's not a fun time in
I haven't
life.
met anyone that said it's a really fun time, and when I do,
Exactly,
I'll
yeah,
correct them.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Be like, no, no, no. Yeah, it was, yeah, definitely just because of the environment. I don't think specifically that environment, but just the environment that he created, where I was very isolated and I was very dependent. And he was always there, always, like, he was always around. Um, so yeah, I didn't feel like I could even articulate what was happening, let alone tell someone this is a bad person. Yeah.
Yeah. And how did all of that sort of leave you feeling?
Mm, at the time, I think at the time, I think I kind of went a bit numb, because I think that was the only way that I could deal with it. So, but it was afterwards when he was kicked out, and when my parents kicked him out, they didn't know the abuse. They only knew that years later when I told them. So they just saw his how his behavior was changing, in that he was quite controlling over me. And they were kind of like, oh, that's a bit weird. Of course, I was just scratching the surface of everything, but they kind of saw that happening and they kicked him out. Um, but when he left, it was weird because I felt even more lost and more vulnerable, because that person had been in my everyday life and controlling pretty much everything that I did and felt for 8 months of my life. So it's a bit strange. I definitely felt helpless, definitely felt a bit crazy, um, and very angry. Anger is a big thing. Yeah.
And so when you did seek help,
Yeah.
so how did helps court and crisis support services help you on your journey towards getting some form of justice and healing after the abuse?
Yeah. Well, number one, couldn't have done it without help support. Definitely 100, like almost goes without saying. I had Emily Redgrove, supporting me the whole way, and she would, say, yep, let's set up a meeting this time. I can do that, even if it was to run through really basic questions that I had about the court process, which was very difficult. Even the court, even before you get to court, that is I feel like you'll never be prepared for that, with the twists and turns and processes and things. So she was someone I could always go to kind of bounce things off and say, am I being too pushy asking for this? Or is this what I should expect? Or is this too little information? Can I ask for more? And she would walk me through every single process, every single step. And for someone like me, and it's probably not uncommon, but I don't want surprises. I don't want any of that. Like, I need to know what's going on so that I can be in as much control as possible in this process. That actually
generally surprises in the court aren't generally good.
Exactly. So it's like, I was like, I need to know nearly everything that you can I was like, just tell me everything that you can. It will be great. So, but not only that, so there was this lovely, this is what I really loved, is the processes and her knowledge that supported me through the actual things, and then the emotional support, which is very rare to get those two things in one place. Because I can Google things and find that, and then I can go to a friend and have that support, but it's very rare, and it's invaluable to be able to have that at the same time with someone. So it was amazing.
And what are some other free services that you've utilised to support you following the abuse, and how have they combined to help you achieve some form of justice and recovery?
So definitely through ACC. I got weekly counselling through ACC because I was 15 when the abuse started. I didn't know that I could access that earlier. So it was actually only it was when I decided to go to the courts, I started looking up options and came across ACC. And then I think I sent out like over 150 emails, because there's just there's so many. Like, I was like, I don't know where to start. So it was just copy paste. And luckily, I think it was like 3 weeks, I got a reply and worked with Frances on the North Shore. She does amazing EMDR.
Yeah.
And game changer. The EMDR is like, that's, for me, it worked. I know it's not for everyone, but for me it worked. So so that was what I accessed. So it was the ACC, that was the other help that I accessed.
Cool. And looking at other ways that people can seek support and improve their mental health after trauma, how have your family, friends, and community helped you during the process? And are there any activities like exercise, meditation, for example, that have supported your healing?
It's a tricky one. There's a lot of aspects there that I think when it comes to family and friends, it's always going to be gauging the situation. Yeah. And I don't want it to be a negative thing, because we do need to talk about it. Family aren't always going to be there and be able to support you through something like this. And it's just a fact, that because they have their own levels of experience and their levels of guilt over things, their levels of their own emotions that they're dealing with. And they can't always put that aside. Understandably, this isn't a criticism. It's just what I found with dynamics and things. And so I think that's to be realistic about that is very important. Of course, exercise, great. Meditation, yes. But also sometimes just, I don't know, listening to really loud music, or just doing something that kind of gets things out, rather than trying to always be calm and like, it doesn't always work like that. So, I think really listening to your body and listening to what you feel like doing in that moment is very important. Whether it's sitting and meditating or running, until you're completely exhausted, you know, and then you walk back
just
home.
Screaming and head banging to some like loud rock music.
Exactly. Just, yeah, exactly. You're not hurting anyone. It's fine. Like it should be fine. Yeah.
And do you feel like you're in a better place now than you were immediately after the abuse?
Yes, definitely. Sometimes thinking back to how I used to be is a bit scary because I'm like, oh my God, how did I get here? Like, how am I still here? You know, like sometimes I'm like, so yeah, so definitely in a much better place. And definitely aware of how important it is to keep the conversations going and keep talking about this and keep it's not going to go away, you know, like, yeah, I might have dealt with my situation, but there's the next person and the next person and the next person. So I think, yeah, anything that I can do now that I'm in this position to help someone else is important. Yeah.
And why do you think that free specialized support services for survivors of sexual abuse and their loved ones are so important?
I mean, it's the difference between life and death, really. I mean, and that's not being dramatic. It really is the difference between that. Some people have the money to access weekly counseling, specialized counseling. Some people can't. Most people can't afford hundreds of dollars a week just for one session, never mind a family who needs help navigating this whole situation. I mean, it's the dynamics in a family and how it's not just the survivor, it's everyone around them. And it's those dynamics that really need to be looked at and sorted out. And sometimes they have to change, and you can't do that by yourself. You need help to do that. Yeah.
And what changes would you like to see in the space, if any? So that could be in terms of like sexual abuse legislation, but support services, or also like society's response to sexual abuse.
Where to begin?
Everyone finds that question really loaded. Maybe break that down for future.
No. I know what you mean. There's a lot in terms of legislation. There's so much, but there is work being done that I've seen in New Zealand that is changing the name suppression situation. That, I mean, it seems so small, but that for me was a massive thing. Like, the amount of anger I had knowing that he got automatic name suppression to protect me. No, I can decide. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just, you're not fooling anyone, you know. But so that would be nice if that was changed. Or it is being changed, I'm not sure. I think the way, for me, and this is actually quite specific from my experience, the police process and investigation leading up to it. And now this isn't a criticism of the police, because it was through them that I was able to, you know, it was everyone working together.
Yeah.
But when you lose evidence, that took me a while to put together. That was photos and stuff and videos. It's not great that then I have to go find that again. So just something small like that, the repercussions that has it can be completely, yeah, I don't know. It's luckily I had people around me that were like, no, listen, we can do this. Let's do it. Come on. But not everyone has that. And that's what frustrates me. I think of all the people that it's much harder for them. So we need to make it as easy as possible. Society, the process, the access to help, it needs to be as easy as possible.
Yeah,
I think.
100%. Yeah, losing evidence, that would be really triggering or just upsetting. It's like, oh, did you not care about this?
Yeah, I still don't know where that other USB is.
Happened.
Yep, don't know where it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be anywhere. But it's fine. It's fine.
You might get a notification in a year or two from now.
But just it's so funny.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You'll be like, oh, we found this. We'll send it. I'll be like, no, I don't want it. Thank you. But you don't know what's going to pop up
Yeah.
at any point. That's it. Yeah, yeah. So I think
Um,
yeah, that's a major thing. All right.
and do you have any advice for anyone who has been sexually abused and needs help?
Make a phone call or send an email to help. Definitely. That's where it can start. If you don't want to talk to someone close to you, if you don't want to share it with anybody else, that's fine. They don't need to know yet. You can speak to someone who is specialist in this area, and they know where to go from here, and you're going to be looked after. You're not going to have to navigate it yourself. So yeah, that's, I mean, there's so much advice. I don't know where to start with that. Like there's so much, but number one, there is help out there and you can get it. And it doesn't have to be someone you know.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Yeah.
And we'll have the number and the email address at the end of this video.
Yeah.
So is there anything further that you'd like to add here, Caitlyn, about your experience with Help Auckland or about your personal story?
Oh, I don't know.
You
Let me just say, I don't think so.
don't
I
have
don't
to.
think so. Yeah, I'm just thinking. I don't think so. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, other than I know I've already said it, but wouldn't have been able to get. Oh, I can say that my abuser was found guilty, and he got 49 months in prison. Now I am aware that he only has to serve a third of that before he's up for parole. And so that's on my mind. But that's okay. I'm enjoying each day, just trying not to think about that. But it kind of, yeah.
Are you going to make submissions to the parole board? I know that Emily can support with that too,
I
that
have,
process.
okay. I haven't, there hasn't been a date for, so he's appealing the whole conviction, which I'm like, okay, it's brave, but, or stupid, I'm not sure. But the, yeah, I don't know. I've been in contact with the court advisor, and she said there's no appeal date yet. So, so I'm just I'm not, I'm just going to wait for them to do that. But yeah, I know that I don't want to say lucky because that sounds terrible, but I know that for historical sexual abuse, to get found guilty on 3 out of the 13 charges and get a sentence of 49 months, that was really the best outcome for me. Initially, I wanted to get his name with the police. That was all my expectation was. So that in 10, 20 years' time, if someone else came forward, they'd be like, oh, someone came back here in whatever, 2020, and, said this. So that's initially all I wanted. And then it went a lot further, and I'm glad it did. Yeah.
And I'm thrilled for you in a sense that you got that outcome and that he was found guilty and that there was in the scheme of sexual abuse sentencing, that's a reasonably lengthy sentence. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I just also want to thank you for joining me from the UK and talking about this. And yeah, it's been really a privilege and I've enjoyed meeting you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed this as well.
Cool. Ka kite, we'll finish up.